Have you ever wondered why the people we love the most sometimes become the ones who twist our emotions the deepest? In a world where everyone broadcasts their best moments on social media, yet hides their fears in silence, manipulation has become a quiet language between partners, friends, and even families. It does not always appear as cruelty. Sometimes it shows up as a question delivered with a careful tone, a sudden withdrawal of affection, or a need for reassurance that never ends. Many men today feel caught in this strange tension where strength is expected, but emotional honesty is punished. They scroll through endless feeds that promise confidence and control, but still lie awake at night, asking themselves why they cannot stop trying to prove their worth to the very people who confuse them most. Dostoevsky understood this long before smartphones existed. He knew that love reveals the parts of us we spend years hiding. He knew that the person you fear losing becomes the mirror that exposes the weakness you refuse to see. And when that mirror becomes too clear, some people turn to influence, guilt, or subtle pressure just to feel safe again. And that is where the story begins. Manipulation is not always planned. Most of the time, it rises from fear that honesty will not be enough to keep someone close. Men today grow up believing they must be controlled, yet they walk into relationships with doubts they do not know how to express. They want closeness, but fear exposure, so they try to shape how they are seen. They watch reactions, offer partial truths, or step back when emotions rise. They do this not from cruelty, but from confusion. Dostoevsky believed that when love touches a hidden wound, the instinct to control appears unaware. Most people never notice when manipulation begins because it often grows in moments that feel almost warm. A man might stay up late talking to someone he cares for and feel a small fear rise when her attention drifts. He may cover that fear with a soft request or a quiet hint meant to pull her back without admitting what he really feels. It happens in simple places, like a kitchen after an argument, or a bedroom when someone turns away first. In this modern world where people are constantly evaluated by their appearance, their income, and their value in relationships, many men carry an invisible pressure that pushes them to secure the affection they fear losing. They do not shout or demand. They adjust their words. They question in a careful tone. They offer affection that expects a certain response. This is not a dramatic act. It is a small shift inside the mind that happens when insecurity meets love. People often believe that manipulation is a sign of cruelty, but in reality, it begins in quiet worries that no one ever confessed. Tenderness becomes a stage where fear hides behind soft gestures that are meant to look harmless. The truth is that the closer someone becomes to you, the more power they have to expose your doubts. The world today teaches men to appear composed at all times, yet life constantly reminds them that love does not obey control. When someone touches the parts of you that you have tried to ignore, a strange instinct appears. You try to guide their emotions. You try to predict their reactions. You try to keep their attention steady so you do not feel the sting of uncertainty. This is not evil. It is the human response to the threat of losing what feels essential. Tenderness becomes the ground where control grows because people fear the honesty that strength requires. There is a quiet truth that most men refuse to admit. It is the fact that love becomes frightening the moment the other person is free enough to walk away. You can sit across from someone at dinner, hear them laugh, watch their eyes soften, and still carry a pressure in your chest that says this could end at any moment. Modern life makes this fear even louder. People switch jobs, move cities, chase opportunities, and live with choices that shift faster than relationships can follow. The world gives everyone unlimited options and very little certainty. This creates an unspoken tension in many men who grow up believing they must hold everything together, even when they feel unsure of their place in someone's life. So they try to shape the flow of the relationship. They check in a little too carefully. They try to guess what will keep the peace. They adjust themselves so they never trigger disappointment. They do this not because they want control, but because they cannot tolerate the idea that affection is fragile. This fear becomes stronger when a man meets someone who has her own world, her own friends, her own ambitions, and her own independence. On the surface, he may say he respects that freedom, yet inside, he worries that her freedom means unpredictability. The mind begins to build subtle strategies to reduce uncertainty. A question here, a suggestion there, a soft attempt to influence her choices. It is not manipulation in the traditional sense. It is a misguided effort to create stability in a world that rarely offers any. Men do this because they believe that if they can predict someone's actions, they will not be blindsided by loss. They fail to realize that love cannot breathe when someone tries to manage it. Freedom inside a relationship is not a threat. It is the only place where trust can grow without fear. Every man has a private room in his mind that he rarely enters. It is the place where old memories sit untouched and where emotions he never learned to name continue to shape how he reacts without his consent. This hidden space becomes especially active in relationships because closeness pulls on the parts of him that he thought were buried. It might start with a simple remark that makes him tense for no clear reason, or a quiet moment that reminds him of a time when he felt unimportant. The world today encourages men to stay busy, to work harder, to distract themselves with routines and responsibilities, and to believe that discipline alone can silence the discomfort they carry. Yet the more they avoid their inner world, the louder it becomes. The mind holds on to every insecurity that was never addressed and every fear that was never spoken. When someone they care about touches those wounds, even unknowingly, the response comes not from logic, but from the unresolved emotions kept in the underground of their psyche. This is where subtle forms of manipulation begin to appear. A man may try to control situations without realizing what drives him. He may question too much, withdraw without explanation, or give affection that has conditions attached to it. These actions come from the deeper part of him that believes he must protect himself from the pain he once felt. The present becomes mixed with the past in ways he does not see. A raised voice might feel like an old humiliation. A delayed message might feel like past abandonment. A misunderstanding might feel like a rejection he experienced years ago. None of this is intentional. It is the mind reacting from a place he never explored. This underground does not make him weak. It makes him human. But until he faces what lives there, his emotions will continue to act before he understands them. And the people he loves will feel the impact of a battle they cannot see. There is a moment in many relationships when a man realizes that what comforts him most is not love itself, but the feeling that he matters to someone. This is not a selfish desire. It is a response to a world that constantly judges his value by his performance, his stability, and his ability to provide. Modern life teaches men that if they are not useful, they are replaceable, and this belief silently follows them into their closest connections. A man may begin to look for signs that he is still important, still chosen, still the one someone turns to. He might offer help before it is asked for, give advice even when it is not needed, or try to fix problems that do not belong to him. These actions feel like care on the surface, but beneath them lives a deeper fear that without usefulness, he will lose his place. It is not manipulation at first. It is an attempt to hold on to significance in a world where roles and relationships shift faster than anyone can prepare for. When a man begins to believe that his worth depends on how much someone relies on him, he starts to shape the dynamic in ways that make him feel secure. This need becomes more intense when he meets someone independent and capable, because her strength challenges the belief that his value must come from being indispensable. He may begin to create situations where he feels essential without realizing that he is doing it. He might overextend himself, offer solutions before listening, or subtly encourage dependence to avoid feeling unnecessary. These behaviors are not rooted in control, but in fear of invisibility. Being needed becomes a shield against the quiet worry that he is not enough on his own. Yet the more he tries to anchor someone to him, the more he loses the honesty and openness that real connection requires. Modern relationships do not collapse because of loud conflicts. They collapse when one person quietly trades authenticity for reassurance. The need to be needed is not evil, but when left unexplored, it becomes the first step away from genuine intimacy. There comes a point in many relationships when a man believes he has finally found someone who lifts him above the parts of himself he once doubted. He begins to admire her, praise her, protect her, and treat her as if she is the answer to everything he once questioned. This admiration feels sincere because it grows out of relief. Modern life exposes men to constant comparison, constant pressure to perform, and constant reminders of what they lack. When he meets someone who makes him feel seen, he places her on a mental pedestal without even noticing. He expects her to stay consistent, patient, and understanding because she represents the safety he has been chasing. But real people change, get tired, have moods, and express their flaws. The moment she acts in a way that challenges his idealized picture, he feels an unexpected sting. It is not anger at her. It is disappointment in the illusion he created. This is when admiration begins to shift into something darker. The man who once praised her now questions her intentions. The man who once lifted her up now finds himself pulling her down when she does not match the image he depended on. This shift is not intentional cruelty. It is the consequence of placing someone in a role they never agreed to fill. When reality breaks the fantasy, the man feels exposed, and that exposure turns into judgment. He may become more critical, less patient, or emotionally distant. He may use subtle remarks or controlled silence to regain the sense of stability he lost. In today's world, many men build their self-worth around the approval of someone they admire. And when that approval becomes inconsistent, their reactions become unpredictable. The person they once idealized becomes the target of their frustration, not because she changed, but because the illusion collapsed. This cycle repeats until the man learns to love a person rather than a projection. If he does not, he becomes both the idol builder and the executioner, destroying the very connection he tried to protect. A man often discovers the truth about himself not in moments of peace, but in the small clashes that happen when he feels misunderstood or dismissed. It can happen during a simple conversation where he feels corrected, or during a quiet evening when his partner seems distracted. Modern life conditions men to carry a silent competition within themselves. They compare their progress to others, measure their worth through achievement, and fear any sign that they are falling behind. This mindset enters relationships in ways they do not notice. Instead of expressing discomfort, they respond with defensiveness. Instead of asking for clarity, they create emotional distance. The need to protect the image of confidence becomes stronger than the desire to be understood. In these moments, love becomes a field where pride and insecurity fight for control. The ego steps forward, not because the man wants conflict, but because he fears vulnerability will make him lose respect. This struggle becomes even more intense when a man cares deeply for someone who challenges him intellectually or emotionally. Instead of appreciating the growth this brings, he may respond with subtle forms of competition. He might try to win arguments, correct details, or prove his point even in situations where harmony matters more than being right. These reactions often come from old lessons that taught him that losing ground means losing value. He does not see that this instinct slowly damages the connection he wants to protect. Many men today feel pressured to appear knowledgeable, steady, and always in control. And when love tests those ideals, the ego reacts before the heart can speak. What was meant to be a partnership becomes a quiet power struggle, not because either person wants to dominate, but because the man has not yet learned that love strengthens when the ego rests and weakens when the ego leads. There are men who do not realize how familiar pain has become to them until a healthy relationship feels uncomfortable. They might meet someone kind and supportive, yet feel restless when things are calm. They may start unnecessary arguments, withdraw without reason, or create tension where none existed. This is not because they want drama. It is because their mind learned long ago that emotional intensity equals connection. Many grew up in environments where affection came with pressure or where attention arrived only when something was wrong. Over time, the nervous system begins to associate closeness with stress. Modern life reinforces this pattern in subtle ways. Entertainment rewards chaos. Stories that go viral usually involve conflict. People become accustomed to noise and mistake it for meaning. When these men step into a relationship that offers peace, their minds do not know how to relax. They confuse stability with boredom and turmoil with passion. Without understanding why, they recreate the same patterns that once hurt them, because the familiar often feels safer than the unknown. This tendency becomes even stronger when a man carries unprocessed guilt, unspoken fears, or a history of unpredictable relationships. He may feel uneasy when things are going well because he expects loss to follow. Instead of waiting for disappointment to arrive, he subconsciously creates it. A delayed reply might become proof that someone is pulling away. A simple question might feel like criticism. A moment of silence might become a sign of rejection. These reactions are not grounded in reality, but in emotional memories that have never been addressed. Men who fall into this pattern are not seeking suffering intentionally. They are seeking something that feels real because calmness feels foreign. The danger is that they mistake emotional disruption for depth and confuse inner conflict with love. Until they learn to separate the past from the present, they will continue choosing partners who trigger their wounds or turning peaceful relationships into battlegrounds that reflect their inner storms. There are moments when a man enters a relationship believing he is bringing only himself, yet he carries silent expectations, shaped by years of watching how people behave around him. These expectations do not feel intentional because they form slowly through experiences at work, friendships that shifted without warning, and family dynamics that taught him to anticipate disappointment. He might assume that commitment always means sacrifice, or that affection always fades with time, because he has seen it happen repeatedly around him. When he begins to care for someone, these assumptions start to appear in small ways. He may become protective in moments that do not require it, or become distant when he feels vulnerable. These reactions create confusion for the person he loves, who sees him changing without understanding why. In many cases, the man does not recognize it either. The unspoken expectations influence him without his awareness, shaping how he interprets every gesture, tone, and moment of silence. As modern relationships move faster and rely heavily on assumptions, these quiet beliefs become even more powerful. A man who carries unspoken expectations might fear that openness will expose him to loss because he has witnessed people give everything only to be left behind. He may think that being too available will make him appear weak because he has seen others praised for acting detached. These beliefs can lead him to control situations without recognizing the pattern. He might monitor how much he gives out of fear that he will be taken for granted. He might misread kindness as a temporary phase. He might expect the worst because the worst has shown up before. The challenge is that these assumptions do not match the reality of the person he is with. They come from experiences that belong to a different time and from people who are no longer part of his life. Until he confronts these expectations, he risks shaping the relationship according to fears rather than truth. This creates a cycle where he keeps the other person close, but never fully lets them in, all because he is trying to stay safe in ways that no longer serve him. There are men who learn early that distance gives them control because closeness once felt unpredictable. They may have grown up in environments where affection shifted without warning, or where speaking honestly led to consequences they were not prepared to handle. As adults, they begin to believe that holding back protects them from loss. They become skilled at giving enough to keep someone near, but not enough to feel exposed. This pattern is reinforced in modern life because many people spend their days multitasking, managing constant messages, and juggling responsibilities that leave them emotionally drained. When a relationship demands presence, the man who relies on distance feels pressure rather than connection. He retreats because it feels familiar. He convinces himself that the space will help him think, even though it often only deepens his confusion. The person he loves senses the withdrawal and tries to bridge the gap, but the more they try, the more he pulls away. He does not see this as avoidance. He sees it as protection from a loss he expects but cannot explain. A man who relies on distance often sees vulnerability as a moment where he could lose control of the narrative. He may feel confident in many areas of his life, yet struggle when emotions require him to be steady. Distance becomes his shield. He might choose to spend more time at work because it offers clarity. He might immerse himself in hobbies because they do not demand emotional risk. He might rely on humor to dodge serious conversations because humor lets him move the moment away from discomfort. These habits create the illusion that he is managing the relationship, but in truth, he is avoiding the parts that would help it grow. The danger is that distance eventually becomes his default, even when he wants closeness. He begins to feel disconnected from his own emotions, unsure of what he truly wants, and frightened of what real intimacy requires. Until he learns to stay present, even when he feels uncertain, he will keep choosing space over understanding and wonder why every relationship ends with the same quiet fading. There are men who move through life believing that strength comes from never showing struggle, yet this belief becomes a quiet weight they carry into every relationship. They grow up hearing that real men solve everything on their own, that admitting confusion shows weakness, and that emotional calm proves maturity. This mindset seems useful in daily life because it helps them stay composed at work, make decisions under pressure, and keep their image steady among friends who rarely speak about their inner life. The problem appears when someone they love asks them to communicate with clarity. They feel the pressure to give answers they do not have, to appear certain when they feel unsure, and to stay calm even when their emotions feel loud. Pride begins to take over in moments where honesty would actually bring understanding. Instead of admitting they feel overwhelmed, they defend themselves. Instead of saying they need time to understand their own feelings, they shut down. These reactions do not come from arrogance. They come from a lifelong training that taught them to hide anything that could be misunderstood as weakness. A man caught in this pattern often notices the distance it creates, yet cannot break the habit because honesty requires a kind of courage he has never practiced. He might avoid conversations that touch on deeper emotions because he fears he will say something wrong. He might insist he is fine even when he feels pressure building inside him. He might correct the other person instead of admitting uncertainty because correction feels safer than vulnerability. In reality, this battle does not protect him. It isolates him. The person he loves sees the guarded responses and begins to feel shut out, even when he does not intend to push them away. This conflict becomes stronger in modern relationships where emotional awareness is valued more than stoic silence. Men who cling to pride often feel left behind because they do not know how to express what they have never been encouraged to explore. Until they learn that honesty strengthens connection rather than weakens identity, They will continue fighting battles that no one else asked them to fight. There are men who enter relationships with a quiet fear they rarely admit, which is the fear of repeating mistakes they witnessed growing up. They remember the arguments they heard behind closed doors, the broken promises that shaped their ideas of trust, and the emotional distance that made them feel invisible. As adults, they carry the worry that they might one day become the same kind of man, even if they have worked hard to be different. This fear shows itself in hesitation when love feels too real, in tension when someone gets close enough to see their flaws, and in discomfort when they sense responsibility growing. Modern life adds another layer because men today are expected to understand emotions that no one taught them to handle. They are expected to be stable while navigating pressures from work, family, and expectations they do not fully understand. The fear grows quietly because every meaningful connection forces them to question whether they have truly broken the cycle or whether they are only delaying it. They begin to watch themselves too closely, looking for signs that they might fail, and this self-doubt shapes their choices more than they realize. A man living with this fear often feels torn between who he wants to be and who he worries he might become. He may overthink his actions because he does not want to hurt anyone. He may withdraw because he fears disappointing someone who believes in him. He may judge himself harshly for small mistakes because he sees them as evidence of a pattern he desperately wants to avoid. This creates pressure that makes emotional openness difficult. The person he loves may sense his hesitation, but not understand the depth of it. What he truly needs is the courage to believe that awareness already means he is not his past. He needs to trust that choosing differently each day changes the story. He needs to accept that growth is slow but real. And at the end of it all, he must ask himself one simple question that only he can answer. What kind of man do you want to be?